Welcome back everyone who has been listening to this podcast earlier, and a warm welcome to those who listen for the first time. This is User Xperience podcast, and in today's episode we will dive deeper into Fitt's law. Fitt's law. That could be anything, right? But what it really is important to every UX designer. This law was named and developed by Paul Fitt, an American psychologist, who was working on a model of human movement which was later called Fitt's law, and is one of the simplest but really important laws for every UX designer. To shorten Fitt's law into one sentence, the bigger an object is and the closer it is to us, the easier it is for us to click on it. Sounds logical, right? But let's have a closer look at this together. Imagine the following real-world setup. You're in the back of a bus driving through the city center. You're listening to the UX Globus podcast while holding your smartphone in your hand. Your backpack is standing between your feet, and directly outside the bus is a real big bank building. The next bus stop is like 200 meters away. One of your friends is standing there. On the top of this bus shelter is sitting a bird. Let me ask you some questions based on this scenario. Is it easier to point at your smartphone in your hands or on the bird on top of the bus shelter 200 meters away? Is it easier to point at the really big bank building outside the bus or at the bus driver at the other end of the bus? Is it easier to point at your friend at the bus stop like 200 meters away or at your backpack between your feet? Think about it, and I will be right back after playing some music. In most cases, it should be obvious which element is easier to point at, and this can be explained with Fitt's law, because the objects are either very big, which makes it easy to point at them, or very close to you, which makes it equally as easy. I want to take a look at another example, but I did not ask you about earlier. Let's compare the big building directly in front of the bus and the bird on top of the bus shelter, like 200 meters away. It is clear to everyone that it is way easier to point at the bank building compared to the bird due to two reasons. Reason number 1, the building is way bigger than the bird. Reason number 2, the building is closer to you than the bird. This real-world example should be clear now, and after another short break, we will find out how a UX designer can use this law and why it matters to us so much. Before we start with the relevance for UX designers, I want to note something. There is a formula for calculating the interaction time it will take a user with an element depending on his or her starting point with a mouse cursor and the size of the element. However, in this episode, I only want to focus on the general importance and understanding of Fitt's law and not on the calculation. When you create some screen designs, there are, for example, buttons that are really important that need to be clickable as easy as possible. If you have an online shop, the Add to Bag or Checkout button are probably two of the most important ones. Therefore, they should be as easy clickable as possible. Based on Fitt's law, that means they should be as big as possible and as close to the user's cursor or finger on touch devices as somehow possible. On a mobile device, that would mean that it is sensible to place the buttons at the bottom of the screen as they are more reachable due to ergonomical reasons. Because it is simply easier to reach the bottom of your phone with your thumb compared to the upper regions. Yes, I know, this episode is filled with questions to you. But think about it for a moment. Is it possible to design infinite big targets on a computer screen? I give you like 40 seconds and we will listen to some music. Alright, did you come up with a solution? I can tell you, there is one. It is possible to make infinite big targets on a computer screen. It is the edges and the corners of the screen. The users can move to them at maximum speed, but cannot miss them, as they are the limits for the interactable field. Therefore, they are infinite big, as the cursor movement can continue infinite long, it will not make a difference. He or she will only hit the target on the edge of the screen or a corner. Therefore, it is sensible to use those regions for shortcuts. Place very important actions on those regions because then it is easy for the user to use them immediately. Another aspect that a UX designer needs to take into consideration is that elements that have actions that follow each other should always be located close to each other. If you have an input form, it is sensible to place the fields underneath or next to each other, right? Because why would you place one item at the very top of the page and the other one at the very bottom? That makes no sense. One more good example is the context menu. If you click with the right button of your mouse, it opens right next to the mouse cursor. Therefore, the distance is reduced to a minimum. To sum up why Fitt's law is so important to every UX designer, always make important interaction elements as big as possible and reduce the distance to the user's pointer, the cursor when interacting with a mouse or the finger when interacting with a touchscreen. Yeah, and that's Fitt's law. I hope you enjoyed that, and as it was a quite long episode today, there will be no entrepreneurship mindset today, but remember, always keep pushing. Have a good one.